All right, guys, I'm your host of the Draft Beard podcast. My name is Joshua Klein, and today we're going to be talking about the top 7 centers in this year's NFL draft. I went with 7. Once I got beyond 7, I was kind of getting a little bit later in the draft in my grades. So I got most of the guys who I think can be starters, and one who I think can be a very quality backup who can give you some limited starts if need be. So with that note, we're going to get started with our number 7 center in this year's draft, and that's Dylan McMahon of NC State. Dylan is a guy who I think can come in and be that guy who can be your 6th offensive lineman. He can fill in at guard. He can fill in at center. He is very athletic. He has a high IQ, agile. He has really good technique. Now, he's not going to overwhelm you. He is going to be able to get outfield, but he is going to struggle a little bit with poor balance. Some guys are going to be able to, get in it around him. That's why I don't think he's going to be able to play tackle. Maybe in a pinch. I just don't see that for him going forward. He's more of a finesse guy. He's not a power guy. Needs a little bit more technique with his hands. Too often his feet get tangled up a little bit, but I think that he can play center guard. If you got a guy center, maybe who's going to be out for a couple of games, I think he can adequately fill in there, and maybe he won't miss a beat. Same thing at guard. I don't think over a long period of time, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe a full season, would I really like Dylan to be your starter, but I think that you can get him to be a really good functional average at fill-in. Based on his intelligence, man, this guy has such high football IQ. It is the lack of strength and bulk, and he's going to need to improve his footwork, that's going to limit him going forward. But I think, I have a 4th, 5th round grade right there, borderline 4th, 5th round grade on Dylan. So if you're looking to get him then, I think he'd be a great value. These mock draft simulators, you see them all over the board. See him in the 6th, see him in the 7th. But my grade on him is a late 4th, early 5th round grade that you can get him as a good developmental center or a guard prospect. You're going to see a lot of that in this year's class. A lot of centers who can play guards who can play centers. But I think Dylan's best position is going to be center. Our next guy is a guy from Penn State. It is Hunter Nourzad, and I like him a lot as well. He's 6'3", 317 pounds. So he's got good weight. He's got good height for the center position. He had big hands, didn't have the struggle with small hands. You're going to see a lot of guys in this year's class who do seem to have very small hands. He has good athleticism. It's not great athleticism. He's very aggressive when he is a run blocker. Again, those big hands. He understands how to get in angles, right? Now, I look at Hunter as a guy who can be versatile. If he needs to start at guard, I think he could. But again, his best position is going to be center. And I think that he can come in, learn. I don't think he's a plug-and-play guy that you can get him in and he would be a great starter from day one. You get him in as an additional offensive lineman in the center of your line. And I think he can go blossom, right? He's going to need to get some more coaching and understanding and improving his pass blocking. He does struggle with balance and leverage. He does have some missed blocks. He's not a dominant run blocker by any means, but I think Hunter is a guy who can, over time, be a good to maybe average starter in the NFL with some potential. Maybe you can get a little bit more out of him. These Penn State guys, they perform really well in the NFL. I like his attitude. I think that can make him successful. He's just got a unbelievable, nasty streak. He's ultra competitive. He's going to put in the work. He's got great work ethic, which is what I really like out of my football players in general, regardless of the position. And he is a guy who I think can be above average starter, maybe an everyday starter. I don't see him being a Pro Bowl potential guy. I had him as a 3rd, 4th round grade with Hunter. And I think that if you get him, you need a center that you can kind of stash on your roster and be ready for him next year. I think he's a guy that you would be very happy with drafting. So that's Hunter Nourzad out of Penn State. All right, my number 5 center. I saw him a little higher on draft boards earlier in the process. That's Sedrick Van Pran out of Georgia. He's 6'4", 298 pounds. Hands a little on the smallish side. He 90, I think it's 9.5 inch, which put him at 30, I think it was mid 30s percentile. So he has the height He's a little bit thin framed. He is still powerful though, even though he is thin framed. He's got great hands. He knows how to drive his hips. Again, this is another one of those guys you're going to hear a lot about. He is very smart. He understands assignments so much so that he can recognize those twist stunts, those blitz packages that are coming in. Even though his hands are small, as I said, he does, when he gets latched on, he does have ability to kind of hold those defenders at bay. He has a good initial burst, which helps him. If he doesn't get that good initial burst that helps establish his leverage, then things aren't going to go so well with them. But you find that a lot with different offensive linemen, that they really use their speed. If they can use their speed to get engaged quickly, it does help them in the long run. I think he's good to average in both pass blocking and run blocking. I think he's dominant in either one area. Now, if you look at what hold him back, again, a lot of things that are good and coachable, like footwork. He's not great when, moving lateral side to side. He needs to make more adjustments. He lacks elite athleticism. It's not great. He's not unathletic by any means, but he has some good and athletic traits to him. And he can kind of get knocked off the ball after initial contact. Now, again, when he uses this speed that he has, a good first step, and gets his hands right, man, he's got you. He's going to be a really good player. But when he doesn't get that right away and he gets knocked back, I mean, that's just offensive line work in general. But he does a guy who's more susceptible to getting knocked off the block after upon initial contact. So I do like him. I think he's a guy who has the ability to be a good starter in the NFL, dependable. I don't see a guy who's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber player, but I do think you're going to get a guy who, if you needed to play him this year, you could get away with playing Sedrick Van Pran this year, get some decent play out of him. Obviously, you're going to have some bumps and bruises along the way, but I think he's a guy who can come in a little bit higher floor, but not a high ceiling. It's like some of the other guys that you're going to talk about in this class. So Sedrick Van Pran, I have him as a 3rd round grade. Not a Pro Bowl guy, kind of mentioned that already, but he's a guy like him. I'm just not, gotta have him. He's not one of my guys, but I think a team that gets him is going to get a very functional starter who could play this year, doesn't necessarily have to sit a year. It's better. Most offensive linemen, year 2, year 3 is when they're going to see the most improvement. But a guy I like that you can get this year if you need a center, maybe slides to guard. I don't see. I think he's really more of a true center than with a lot of these other guys. So if you're looking for him in the 3rd round, good value in the 4th round, I do like Sedrick Van Pran. All right, my number 4 offensive lineman in this year's class is in the same conference as Sedrick Van Pran, and we find Beaux Limmer out of Arkansas from the SEC. Hey, Beaux, he's 6'5", just around 300 pounds. He is not big. He's not small either, right? He doesn't have super small hands. He doesn't have super small arms, kind of right there mid-level range. What he does have is he has elite athleticism. He ran that short shot on him, I think it was 4.5 seconds. He's very agile for his size, allows him to pull and reach. He reaches the second level very well. He's very smart. Again, another trait that will get you a long way regardless of the position, but especially at center in the NFL, you need to be smart. You need to go know all the assignments, what's happening, get those blocking call outs, and he is very smart. He processes very quick, understands what's coming at him in pass protection. Not as good in run protection, but he's a better pass protection. He can play both guard or center. But given his size and his athleticism and how smart he is, I think a center is actually the best spot for Beaux Limmer. He has really good feet. He can move well. Now, where he struggles is he lacks the ideal play strength, right? He can get overpowered by defenders, especially in gap schemes. He needs to control himself. Like, he is a little overdone it. It's like a little bowling ball. Kind of gets a little bit over aggressive. He needs to work on his punch technique a little bit. I do like Beaux a lot. I think I don't know if he's a plug and play this year, but I think he has a higher ceiling than Sedrick. That's why I had him above Sedrick Van Pran. Higher ceiling. He is not a guy I think I really want coming in and starting from day one. Get him acclimated, get him some snaps. In that first year, he has to start. Get some good coaching under him. But I do think he can develop into a very adequate, average NFL starter. not a guy I see as a Pro Bowl potential guy, but I like him. His athleticism is going to, and his high IQ is going to play very well at the center position in the NFL. A very athletic guy. I think he had a high RAS score for those of you who like that kind of thing, the relative athletic score. So like Bortolini is my next guy who I'm going to talk about, and I like Beaux Limmer. So they're very similar players. We're going to move right into my next guy, and that is Tanor Bortolini, that guard center out of Wisconsin. Again, another guy with positional versatility. I think he has another higher ceiling than Beaux. I think his floor is actually a little bit higher too. He's 6'4", 303 pounds. Bigger hands. I think 10-inch hands as well. He runs the 40-yard dash pretty well. He ran at 4.94. Very fast guy. Awesome short shuttle. Way below that threshold that you need to see in the low 4.5s. That really symbolizes whether you're going to be an adequate to good NFL player. He has excellent hand placement. He's a really good timing and pass protection. He's very athletic. He's not as smart as I'd say some of the other guys, so I wouldn't call him like a high IQ guy, but he's good. He's functionally knows what the assignments. He's not a quick processor as other guys, but he is very, very athletic. And his lateral movement, man, he can move with the best of them, gets to that second level very well. I don't see him as an elite guy, right? Not another guy who I think is going to have Pro Bowl potential. Another guy who I think is going to be fill in. He'd be a very good center in the NFL, get the job done. He's not as good at run blocking, much better pass blockers you'd expect with his high athleticism. He's going to struggle with the strength against the bigger guys in the NFL. He's probably going to be limited to more of a zone blocking scheme than others. But again, I think he's a guy that can come in. A lot of these guys, the same, come in, get a few starts under their belt, progress by year 2, year 3, and see an average NFL starter that you can get in the third round. Again, another guy had a third round grade on. There's a couple guys at third round, one at fourth, McMahon, fourth, fifth round. Now, next, we're going to get into my top guys here. I have a couple guys here at center that I really, really like. The next guy is my number 2 center in this year's draft. And that is Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. Man, I absolutely love this guy. That wrestling background really plays well with him. He's super tough. He's got a strong base, man. He can anchor in pass protection. Now, he's not overly athletic, right? He's a little bit different than what we've seen with the other guys in the center class with McMahon and Bortolini and Limmer. Those guys are the athlete. They're going to win because they're very athletic. Zach Frazier is going to win because he's going to maul you and overwhelm you. He's not super athletic for the really good athletes at the position, but he places his hands well. He uses his pad level. He's very technical. He can't play guard if he needs to, like a lot of these guys. I think he's really smart. He's got that, again, we use that term, high football IQ. He's got that high football IQ. He knows the assignments. He knows what's coming. He understands what the blitz packages that are going to be coming up. And he uses his wrestling background to get good leverage. Another thing that's really good about him playing at center is he is really good at snapping that ball quickly. Where is Frazier's kind of limited at athleticism? It's not like it is in other guys. He's going to struggle with the lateral movement. He's going to struggle in the zone blocking schemes. He's got tight hips. You're going to hear a lot of guys with his height. Sometimes these offensive linemen, they're kind of a waist bender. One problem with Zach a lot, he drops his head too much. He's got to keep that head up. I played hockey growing up, and you want to keep your head up. You don't want to be looking at the puck. It's the same thing. You don't want to be looking at the feet of the defender. You want to be looking at him. Look at his hips, look at his shoulders, and keep your head up and understand what's happening in front of you, not the grass, not the ground. He's not a guy that I'm going to want to place on an island against another player. Again, he's going to come in and just maul you and try to beat the crap out of you. That's Zach Frazier. And he's going to go from the moment the whistle sounds all the way to the end. That's why I really like him. He is a guy who I think could come in as a day one starter in the NFL. I don't see it as a Pro Bowl type guy, but I think he can be of above average to good NFL starter. But he is a guy, one of the first guy in my group of 7 here that I think could come in on day one and be a starter for you in the NFL. I think first, maybe if you need a guard position, put him at guard, then move him into center. If you need a starter day one at center, and there are quite a few teams this year, Miami, Pittsburgh, who need centers desperately. I think Zach could come in and be a day one starter for you. So now we're going to get to my number 1 center in this year's class, and he is one of my guys. I have a top 15 grade on him, but I love JPJ. I love Jackson Powers Johnson. Now, he's not tall for the position, right? But he, at 325 pounds, I believe, he's got the girth, man. He has just got that strength. I think he can come in, be a day one starter at guard or center. I see Pro Bowl potential out of JPJ. If you need a center that's going to be in your lineup for the next 8 to 10 years, Jackson Powers Johnson is your guy. I don't usually like to do a lot of player comps, but I see him as 2 former Detroit Lions. One's a current Lion, and another former Detroit Lion, actually New England Patriot. Damian Woody or Frank Ragnow. I see a lot of JPJ in those 2 guys, right? He would be a perfect replacement in the long run for Frank Ragnow in Detroit. He has exceptional athleticism. Man, this guy is an athlete. He is strong in both run blocking and pass blocking. He's got great feet. He's going to fit in both gap and zone. He is a proven leader. I mean, my gosh, this guy, he played on the D line in a bowl game. Are you kidding me? Just, hey, we're short, moved over, also played D line. Now, where he could get in trouble, right? He's got kind of more of a round ball. He has average arm length. He needs to improve his hand placement. He does stand upright too much. He can struggle to maintain balance. Given his athleticism, kind of surprises me. And he is overly aggressive. Now, you can take that aggressiveness and be a mauler and just going from the whistle right from the snap to the whistle, pardon me. But he tends to be a little bit over-eager, a little bit over-aggressive, which can get him in trouble sometimes, get him pushed back a little bit too much in the pocket, or guys, using their trick bag and their toolbox and getting around him due to his hand placement, and he's over-aggressive. But again, Jackson Powers Johnson is one of my favorite offensive linemen and favorite players in this draft. I absolutely love that guy. I see him as a potential all-pro player. He's got both the athleticism and he's got enough strength and power. You combine them both and you've got yourself an 8 to 10 year starter. I think he's definitely worth a first round grade. So if you're looking for an all-pro plug and play, just an amazing player that you're going to put him there and forget about him, and he's going to get the job done for you, that's Jackson Powers Johnson. And I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes in this year's draft and where he ends up and how he progresses throughout his career. See, if he ended up with my Lions, man, I would be ecstatic. But I don't see that happening. But hey, you never know what will happen. So with that, let me know what you think in the comments. These are my top 7 centers in this year's NFL draft. And we'll see how many of them actually go in the first 4 rounds. I'm thinking that we'll see 6 of these guys go, possibly all on day 2 of the day 1 and 2 of the NFL draft, but maybe one of them slips to day 3. Don't see Dylan McMahon as a guy who will be drafted in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. I'd be really surprised if that happens. 7 centers in an absolutely loaded interior and tackle class in this year's NFL draft. Look forward to seeing you next time as we discuss our next position group in this year's NFL draft. With that, I'm Joshua Klein, your host of the Draft Beard Podcast. See you next time.
The Draft Beard Podcast.